Hello, I'm hoping that everyone can hear me now. So this section of this particular open day that we've got is to introduce you to one of our programs here at St George's. Now, I'm going to just talk a little bit generally to begin with to give time for a few more people to join if they wish to. Because I hopefully people will have been just listening to Dr. Curran Rees-Hooper over on another section of this program where he was talking just a little bit about the graduate school and St George's generally. And now hopefully people are able to move between the various elements of the agenda and to observe these various presentations. So as I say, hopefully you can hear me if you're watching. If you can see that I'm moving my lips but you can't hear anything, please do feel free to put that in the chat so I can see whether I need to adjust my settings at all. But I think everything is working as it should. So just to introduce myself then, so my name is Dr. Kate Everett, and I'm actually the Deputy Head of the Graduate School here at St George's as well. So I have general oversight for all our taught programmes here at St George's. However, today I am talking specifically about the Genomic Medicine programme. So I'm just currently the interim course director for this program. I have been the full course director in the past, so I am qualified to talk about this degree, geneticist by training. But I am just covering for the proper course director who will be back fairly soon. So what is the Genomic Medicine programme at St George's? Well, the first thing I'd like to flag up actually is that this is a really exciting degree, partly because it's actually jointly taught with colleagues of ours at King's College London. So students on this programme really benefit from the joint expertise at both universities and indeed from the clinical elements of those universities that feed in. So we work with hospitals, with trusts as well, both at St George's and at King's College London. And we have contributing staff who are both non-clinical academics like myself, but also clinical members of the trusts as well, and they contribute to these programs. Just to tell you then a little bit more about who we are. So, as I say, I'm the interim course director. The normal course director is Dr. Clara Chiesa-Barella, and she is shown on this particular slide, and we normally have a deputy director as well. Now, as I said, this is a jointly taught programme, so we also have programme leads based at King's College London, and the programme lead at King's going forward is a chap called Dr. Alan Hodgkinson. And if you were to do this program, you'd also find that you would liaise a lot with our course administrator, who's Georgia Baines. And I also wear another hat on this program. So if you apply for the course, then I'm actually the academic admissions tutor who will assess your application and make a decision on that. So that's another part of my role on the program. We then have a number of module leads who run the different modules on the program. I'll talk you through those different modules. So this is just the names of some of them. Maybe you then might want to Google them and see their particular research interests and what they're likely to be teaching you about if you do the program. So exciting elements of the MSc in genomic medicine is that it's a very flexible program and it's very accessible. So it's a modular degree, and there's actually a fair amount of choice with respect to which modules you wish to do. There are some which are core and mandatory, and I'll talk you through those. But there are others that you can really choose between. So you can create quite a nice bespoke combination of modules depending on your interests. As I say, we have this spine of the program where there are core modules that all students on the MSc have to do, but we have an ever-growing, in fact, number of optional modules as well. I'm talking more generally, and I'll usually use the term MSc in genomic medicine. But we do actually have some alternative awards which you can apply for if you don't want to do the full MSc. So we have a postgraduate diploma and a postgraduate certificate. So the postgrad diploma is about, consider it to be 2/3 of the size of an MSc. It's just made up of taught modules, no project. And the postgrad certificate, again, is smaller again. So that's a third of the size of the full MSc. And I'm very happy to answer questions on that and explain more. But essentially, it's made up, the PG Cert's made up of 4 taught modules. The postgrad diploma is made up of 8 taught modules. On the MSc, in comparison, you do 8 taught modules and a project, or in some instances, 10 taught modules and a kind of smaller project. What's also worth bearing in mind is that the MSc and the postgrad diploma can both be done either full-time, in which case you complete that degree in 1 year, or part-time, in which case you're doing it across 2 years. The postgrad certificate is always expected to be completed in 1 year. It's considered a part-time degree, but because it's only 4 taught modules, the expectation is that that is completed in 1 year. I mentioned here that there are 4 particular pathways on the PG Cert. I won't go into detail about that now, but I'm happy to answer any questions. What's more, you can also do modules from the program as individual standalone modules for continuing personal and professional development. And we have quite a few working students, particularly healthcare practitioners, who do that. They take perhaps 1 or 2 individual modules to just enhance their own particular expertise and to upskill. So what are these modules that I keep referring to? Well, this slide describes them. So we've got a good number of these now. I mentioned that we have core modules, which if you're on the MSc or indeed the postgrad diploma, then you have to do 3 particular modules. And those are the fundamentals of human genetics and genomics, omics techniques and their application to genomic medicine, and a bioinformatics interpretation, statistics and data quality assurance module. So those ones are that form the spine of the program. And then we have what are called core elective modules, and forgive the terminology, but basically what we mean by this is that if I talk just now about the MSc, is that if you're an MSc student, you have to do at least 3 of those core elective modules, so those 4 core elective modules. So the molecular pathology of cancer, pharmacogenomics and stratified healthcare, application of genomics in infectious disease, and genomics of common and rare disease. Now you can choose to do all 4, but if you want, you can just do 3. Now, if you only do 3 of those for the MSc, then you would do additional optional modules from the suite that are shown here. So we've got, as I say, an ever-increasing number of optional modules. We're currently running 6 optional modules, or we will be in the upcoming academic year. Actually, we're only running 4 of these at the moment. We've got 2 exciting new ones. So you can choose between cardiovascular genetics and genomics, an introduction to counselling skills in genomics, ethical, legal and social issues in applied genomics, genomics of neurological disorders, advanced bioinformatics, and fetal genomics. And this is just to flag up that, yes, the genomics of neurological disorders and fetal genomics, we're really excited. These are brand new modules that we're running for the first time in 2024-25 academic year. Now, what you might note as well, so indicated on each of these modules is whether they're actually taught at SGUL, so at St George's University of London, or at King's College London, KCL. So you actually have your teaching split across the 2 universities. So if that module is indicated as SGUL, so for example, the first one, the fundamentals of human genetics and genomics, that's actually a module that I run, and that is taught here at St George's. And then that your next module, the omics techniques and application to genomic medicine, is run by colleagues at King's College. So you would go up, in fact, central London to near London Bridge, if you know that area, to be taught on their campus there. So we don't split the teaching between on any individual module between the 2 institutions, but individual modules are run by either SGUL or KCL. So this is what I've mentioned already in terms of the number of taught modules. So for the MSc in genomic medicine, typically most students do 8 modules, and what's what is a 60 credit research project. In total, if you're familiar with the concept of credits, an MSc is 180 credits. So one way or another, you've got to make up that 180 credits. Some of our students do 10 taught modules and a smaller research project, kind of an extended literature review. And this is often what our part-time students do. So those of our students who are actually doing the MSc over 2 years and are working full-time alongside that, often it's easier for them to do a smaller research project, but we can advise you on that as well. As mentioned, the postgrad diploma is just 8 taught modules, so no research project. Whilst the postgrad certificate course is, again, this smaller package of 4 taught modules that have to fit into particular pathways. And again, I can always advise on which modules you might need to do should you wish to do that. As mentioned, all our modules are offered as standalone modules, so there really is a huge range of choice here. The delivery of our program is a little different from that which you might be used to. So rather than, for example, you being taught every Tuesday and Thursday for a period of, say, 10 weeks, each module is taught in a block, what is considered to be burst mode. So you'll have 5 consecutive days of teaching, either Monday to Friday or perhaps Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, but 5 consecutive teaching days for each module. And then each module is assessed as you go through the year. So there's no end of year exam. Instead, you have 1 or maybe 2 assessments, perhaps more usually 2 assessments per module. And once your teaching for that module is finished, then your time is spent in self-directed learning to prepare for those assessments. All assessments are delivered online, so it might be an online exam, or you might submit, say, an essay or a data analysis assignment remotely. So you're not having to come back on site to, say, sit a formal exam. You would do these remotely via our virtual learning environment. This timetable can be found on our website as well. And as I say, this slide is to give you, again, our contact details. Please do contact either myself, Kate Everett, as acting course director and admissions tutor if you've got questions, but also Clara Chiesa Barella. Her email address is shown here, and she'll be back taking the helm of this course from June this year. So the actual delivery of the program is blended format. So you'll receive a mixture of on-site and online teaching and a mix of synchronous or live and asynchronous learning. Modules vary. So some modules might be, say, 2 days of remote teaching and 3 days of face-to-face teaching. We do have 1 or 2 modules who, for good reasons, prefer fully 5 days, all 5 days of their teaching to be face-to-face. Happy to answer questions. So when you're on site, if it's a St George's module, then you'll be down in Tooting, where I am now in South London. If it's a King's College module, then primarily that'll be in central London in London Bridge, although occasionally it's using one of their other parts of campuses. So there's one at Waterloo and there's one in Denmark Hill, which is also more sort of slightly South London. When we have online delivery, say this might be some live synchronous activity, normally via MS Teams, but a lot of it's then asynchronous, perhaps pre-recorded quizzes, videos, various elements that we'll give to you to just work through. As I said, some modules will run fully on site. So we'll support you through the program. So the module leads are there absolutely to talk to. And as I said, there's course director, there's deputy director at both St George's and King's, and an administrator. But you also have a personal tutor to provide pastoral support. So they may be either a King's member of staff or a St George's member of staff. Some of you will be used to a personal tutor system already, but for those of you who aren't, this is someone who isn't there to provide additional academic tutoring, but very much is there, as I say, to provide pastoral support, to help you just negotiate your way through the program, really. So you can meet those. We generally require 3 meetings a year, but you could meet with your personal tutor more if you wished. There is, of course, institutional support as well, so academic support in the forms of something called Study Plus or Academic Success Services. Our colleagues in the library are fantastic at giving support, but there's also the counselling service both at George's and at King's, the Student Union, careers support that you can access throughout your time with us. There are some funding opportunities. So if you are actually someone currently studying at St George's and listening to this, there is a discount for our alumni. If you work for the NHS and are listening to this, then there's normally funding from NHS England to support the study. And we do also have 4 scholarships available, which act as a tuition fee discount as long as you apply before the 1st of May. That is the deadline if you wish to be automatically considered for one of those scholarships. And again, this is just alerting you to my details, as I can give more information with respect to funding in these ways as well. We do also have colleagues who can more generally provide information about funding and financing situations that sit in the student finance department. I often get asked about how you can prepare for this course. Well, there's some fantastic MOOCs, as they're known, massive open online courses that some of you may be familiar with. We have developed some specific ones at St George's, which are excellent preparation, particularly the genomics era, the future of genetics in medicine, which gives you a really nice introduction to elements of genetics. It's very accessible. Then there are slightly more higher level ones that address genomic technologies and clinical diagnostics. And we do actually recommend that our students do these more advanced MOOCs as they're part of their self-directed learning, actually when they're on the program, but you're always welcome to access them beforehand as well. So those are just some of the ways you can prepare. These have been developed in partnership with Future Learn. Of course, there are others that you can access generally as well. And as highlighted, particularly the first one is of probably particular use. So who does genomic medicine? Well, about a third of our students are fresh graduates straight out of bioscience degrees. What we're looking for typically there is demonstration that there's been sufficient genetics in your undergraduate degree to kind of cope with the MSc. So that's what I'd be looking at as an academic admissions tutor. But yeah, most of our students who are fairly recent graduates have done maybe biomedical science, biochemistry, genetics, these sorts of things. We also have intercalating medical students who have completed at least their first 3 years of their medicine degree. And then we also have working people doing the program, either as the full MSc, the postgrad certificate, the postgrad diploma, or individual modules. And I've just listed some of the jobs that they do here. Things like they might be practicing biomedical scientists in the NHS, nurses, doctors. We have a whole range, so it makes a really interesting cohort of students if you're working with these people, studying alongside them, benefiting from one another's experiences. In terms of careers, what can you do with this? Well, our graduates are going on to quite an array of career options now. So absolutely, it's a good way into PhD studentships. But we also see them, for example, going to work at pharmaceutical companies, going into clinical trials, into bioinformatics. Some do go on to do medicine. There's a huge range of career opportunities. We've got some who've been able to go access the scientist training program, which we know a lot of students are really interested in as well. So it's a good route into a wide range of areas of science, obviously particularly genomics, but more generally as well. And the transferable skills that you'll get, which set you up for, say, a good range of careers, really. So I'll stop talking now and end this presentation and stop sharing my screen. And I'd be very happy, as I say, to take questions in the chat. And thank you very much for attending and for listening to this presentation. So I should be back now. They're fully on your screen. So as I say, very happy to take any questions in the chat. I can see some people are typing, and I will just pop in there. Brilliant. That's a good question, Amrita. So the timetable will remain as it is now. So we have just updated the website. So I might ask, Chris is in the background from marketing. So I know he's updated the times with respect to one of our modules, which just changed slightly, the cardiovascular genetics module on the general website. There is a PDF timetable. Now, that I suspect Chris can correct me if he's there, but that has not been. Chris, have you updated the PDF timetable, or do we need to update that again? Because that also has the assessment dates on it so that people can plan a little bit. So I'll just let Chris check on that, but they're on the website. If you go to the general module details, then that gives the days of teaching. So what the timetable gives, or the dates on the module. Thank you, Chris. Everything's been updated. So the details are accurate. So what's provided are the days, essentially, or the dates that the module teaching runs. That's where you'll see that it might just be 5 days, or if it's split across a weekend, no teaching on weekends, but it might be split across the weekend. So maybe start on say the 11th of September to the 18th, something like that. So those dates are accurate. Those are the dates where the module teaching runs. But then, as I say, after that, you will need to be preparing for doing any online exams or open assessments, data analysis, critical reviews of papers, this sort of thing. So that's where your additional time goes. But that PDF that Chris has provided a link to contains assessment information, deadlines as well for you. So hopefully that's helped, Amrita. Please do pop any more questions in there. Julia, so NHS England funding, does it cover the whole MSc? It can do, but what they ask for at the moment, so initially we can only apply for funding for up to four modules per candidate with respect to NHS England funding. Now, how that works is that essentially once you've applied for the programme, and assuming I approve an offer to be made for you, then I would actually trigger that application for funding to NHS England. I would provide your name, your email address, and the titles of the first 4 modules you want to do, and then send that information to NHS England. They would then contact you and ask for your line manager details, and they then contact your line manager and ask for a letter of support. Normally, if that comes through, then funding is approved, but initially just for 4 modules. This is why partly why sometimes those people working for the NHS who are wanting to do the programme actually apply for the PG Cert in the first instance, because that is 4 modules, and that's the limit in terms of funding. However, if funding is still available, because there is a limit, but if funding is still available as we go through the year, then we can apply for additional funding. And there are plenty of people who've worked at the NHS who have received funding for the full MSc. We just can't guarantee it. Hope that helps, Julia. Any more questions? That's great. Okay, work experience. Right. So that's a good question. So I think we're very realistic about work experience in that it's not make or break for your application. So sure, in an ideal world, maybe you'd have got work experience in a lab or in the NHS or something like that. But we know that that's really difficult to get. So if you apply for the MSc in Genomic Medicine and you don't have any work experience, don't worry. You know, if Amrita, if you're talking as someone who's maybe an undergraduate now or a fresh graduate, we know that it is really difficult to get. So it's much more important that you are able to show in your personal statement why you're interested in the program, what really excites you about genomics, that sort of thing. Now, if you're already working, you might say working in the NHS or working in a lab or something like that, and you're wanting to do this alongside that work, then of course you might talk about how it will benefit your work or your future plans. anybody could say that. But say work experience, we don't expect necessarily to see that. In terms of how that might inform your decisions, if you had a bit of work experience in doing wet work in a lab, then you might know whether or not you like that. Now, none of the modules involve wet work in the lab, but your research project can. So if you've already done a research project undergraduate in the lab and you loved it, then you know that you can be looking maybe to do a wet lab project for this master's as well. Or maybe you're not keen on that, in which case we can offer bioinformatics projects. So maybe try doing a bit of one of these free online courses in coding in R or Python or something to see whether that's something that interests you. So again, our bioinformatics module, the core module, does not assume any prior knowledge in coding, and in fact doesn't really cover coding. It's more about the whole concept of how data is handled. You can do a bit of coding in the advanced bioinformatics module if you choose to do that. So we have students on the program coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, so we don't expect huge expertise in any particular area. Hope that helps, Amrita. Sandra, do you have to work in a particular sector of the NHS? No. So no, basically, in terms of certainly applying for the programme from our point of view, from an academic point of view. Although, again, so we have had one or two students on the programme who are actually administrative in the NHS. Now, it will be important then to see what perhaps their undergraduate degree was. And again, I'm assessing then to see whether there's sufficient genetics knowledge to be able to access the programme appropriately. Where it's more apparent, say, if we've got, say, a clinical research nurse who's working in a cardiovascular genetics lab applying for the programme, then they clearly have knowledge and experience from their job, which would be relevant to the MSc. So it's not strongly relevant. The only caveat as well that I'll just add to that is that with respect to funding, and NHS England's decision to whether or not they will fund you, you do have to have a recognised contract with the NHS to be eligible for funding, and you can find out more information from their website about that. So I think I'll just try and find that website for you. It's the Genomics Education website. Chris, if you're still there in the background, would you mind finding the URL for the Genomics Education Programme website, where it has information for eligibility for funding for NHS staff? Because you can be working for, say, for example, Viapath, who provide a service for the NHS, and still be eligible for funding. So that, again, there's a couple of little quirks there. Sorry, Chris, asking you to do that if you're busy, but I can't talk and search at the same time. Hope that helps, Sandra. Thank you, Chris. That's fabulous. So that link will take you to the website if you're interested in potentially getting funding to study with us. My pleasure, Sandra. Any more questions have we got here? Let's think about if there's anything else. So yeah, just perhaps to return to projects, as I say, is we have you can do projects either with academics and clinical colleagues at St George's, and that includes the Trust, or at King's College London as well. So we have a range, say significant range of projects which we advertise to our students once they're on the programme. And that might be, as I say, that can be wet lab projects. It could be quite in-depth bioinformatics projects with students who've done projects with genomic counsellors in the Trust. So as long as it's related to genomic medicine, then we actually have quite a broad range that we're happy to accept. As well as advertising projects to students, we are happy for students to potentially try and seek out their own projects. We go through an approval process in-house, but again, that's something often if our students who are already working, say in a laboratory somewhere, that they might be able to do something related to their day job. But equally, full-time students doing on the MSc who are perhaps fresh graduates, but they have heard of a particular researcher based at a research institute, maybe the Crick Institute in London, then they can seek out a specific research project, just has to get signed off by us. Anything else that I should be saying? Just to stress again about if you want to be considered for the scholarship, which is a reduction in fees by £3,000, please do get your applications in before the 1st of May, and then you will be automatically considered for that as long as you're eligible. And our eligibility criteria can be found on the website. Thank you, Chris. I think it's just whilst I wait to see whether we have any more questions, but I think it's a very interesting degree. Obviously, I am biased, but it has great breadth and depth, and really does bring in that dual expertise that we have at both institutions of you getting taught by both people like myself, scientists who work in the field of genomic research, but also our clinical colleagues as well, who are patient facing, so clinical geneticists, genomic counsellors who contribute a really popular introduction to counselling module as well. So as I say, we just try and bring that expertise into the programme. I think we do have some of our current students probably on the UniBuddy system who you can chat to online at another time if you want a bit of inside information as well about the programme. Chris, I can see you're typing. If you've got any other inspiration you think I should mention. You got Rebecca as one of our UniBuddy on UniBuddy. That's fantastic. What other things do people tend to? So yeah, just briefly, I guess, mention again about assessment, because that's something people often ask about. Say most modules are assessed by have 2 assessments, usually an online short answer question, multiple choice question exam, timed exam, and either, so for example, the first module is a critical review of a scientific paper. For the bioinformatics module, there's a bit of a data handling project. For the counselling module, we ask students to do a bit of a role play, like communication skills and a patient leaflet. So this is the sorts of assessments you might do. And then for the projects, you have a sort of standard thesis to write of a word limit up to 10,000 words, I think it is, for the 60 credit project, smaller for the 30 credit, and then there'd be a presentation as well, a short presentation involved in that as well, and for the 60 credit, a little 750 word proposal at the beginning. Okay, well, I will stay here happily for a while longer to see whether any more questions come in. I can try and answer any questions you might generally have about George's and being a postgrad student here as well, if you wish. I think there's also, again, I think have available to you some chat sessions with potentially our international student advisor and the head of our postgrad administration team. So there's more people you can chat to generally. I'll just give again my email address. Any questions that you might have after the event? Okay, so I'm going to mute myself, but I will stay here for a little bit longer. Okay, thank you so much for coming along, and hopefully I'll maybe see applications from you if you haven't applied already, and maybe meet you all, or some of you at least, in September. Thank you very much for coming along.